What's up, everybody? Well, today I'm here to bring to you another vacuum that's in my vacuum collection, and it is another Dirt Devil. What I have for your viewing pleasure today is probably one of the most sought after Dirt Devil vacuums among vacuum collectors, or people who just like a perfect working vacuum in general. What I have for you guys today is a Dirt Devil Ultra MVP. This is one of the high-end, top-of-the-line models in the Dirt Devil lineup, and the MVP name. There was definitely another version of the MVP that was based on the deluxe platform, which initially I wanted that. But if I could find an Ultra MVP before it, I won't object. And I actually stumbled across this at a local Goodwill just in the next town over. And it was only for like 15 bucks. But it did not look this good when I got it. When I got it, for whatever reason, the hose was missing, as well as all the attachments, even though that is just typical. But the hose, how do you lose that? So, when I first bought this vacuum had no hose. Although you could still use it even without a hose. But you gotta at least have all the tools and stuff on. So I ended up buying a hose, actually new old stock, believe it or not, on eBay, and installed it on this, and to make sure it was the correct the part number, and all. Even for the correct model, because I didn't want to buy one that was accidentally for the deluxe-based MVP. But now that that's all fixed up, there are some things it definitely needs, like the edge wedge tool that always goes missing on this is missing, which frankly I could live without. But the other attachments it'll also need, which I could just steal attachments from other vacuums that'll work on this just fine. But this was the find of a lifetime for me. And this was honestly one of my top 3 favorite Dirt Devils. The first 2 being based off the deluxe. The one, the actual MVP. The other one, the regular deluxe. But now let's go ahead and give a walkthrough of the cleaner. So this, being one of Dirt Devil's high-end model vacuums, it definitely is built to a high quality, even though it does have a little bit of Dirt Devil cheapness to it. The one thing I do like is the handle grip. Had this nice looped style handle that always feels high-end to me, with this nice rubber grip at the top. So moving along down here, we do have your nice Ultra MVP labeling on the front, maximum vacuum power, and you do have a bag check indicator right there. Then obviously your spot for where your edge wedge tool would have gone if it didn't go missing. To get access to the bag on this, you do have to pull this little tab outwards, and then this will lift off. And then the bag is actually mounted in a little specialty tray right up top here that I currently have a Hoover Y bag taking in its place. A generic Y bag at that matter. So I can have HEPA filtration. And it definitely works pretty good for what it is. And as we look inside the bag compartment, look at how massive this fill tube is. That's just ridiculous. Now keep in mind, the motor in this is just a simple little single stage motor, so it wouldn't be the most powerful of motors if it were put into a normal vacuum, but put in this with a giant fill tube and all, running down through this massive hose on the bottom base of the vacuum, that is also controlled by a little suction diverter valve when the vacuum is put into its upright position. This thing has massive amounts of airflow. And some collectors that also do airflow box testing can definitely prove that this thing produces massive amounts of airflow. I mean, pretty much at direct air vacuum levels. So that is one thing that's amazing about these, is that the sheer power that these have for a bypass upright vacuum. And here is your pre-motor filter. Not really the best quality, but it works. And still has surprisingly good amount of airflow despite that. And up here is your little post-motor filter that can be somewhat with persuasion pulled out and replaced. And this definitely works pretty good for what it is. So to get the bag off, you do have to pull this little tab right here, which if you were to have normal bags, but since this one just has a Hoover Y bag in its place, the tab doesn't really work too well. And then you could slide it down to change your bag. But sometimes you do have to make sure it's on the guide in order for it to sit right on in its place. So make sure the hole is lined up, and the bag will simply just, in a way, hinge back on. You also have to pull the latch to make sure it's out of the way, and then it's back on in its place. So moving along down here, you do have more labeling right here for MVP, maximum vacuum power, which I really love the blue outlining on these MVP logos, excuse me. It is a 12 amp motor with motor guard system, which basically just means the pre-motor and post-motor filters. One thing that is kind of cool about these Ultra MVPs are these twin headlights, which really look nice, especially if you're vacuuming in the dark, even though most people wouldn't really like to do that, but it definitely gives the vacuum a nice look. And right up top here is your carpet height adjustment setting. Let's see if I can get this to move. It is pretty stiff. So anyway, you do have actually 4 positions of carpet height, but this 5th one all the way over here, as you can see in a position where it says brush stop, is actually what turns off the brush roll motor, which I should point this out is electrically driven, separate from the actual suction motor, which this is a dual motor vacuum. But this brush roll motor control is definitely a lot different than most others I've seen. Most people just have a 3-position switch where one position will be for suction only and the next position down is brush roll. But Dirt Devil actually did something very interesting. They had the brush roll motor be controlled by a little micro switch down in there that when it's depressed, the brush roll motor won't turn. And how it depresses is when this carpet height adjustment setting is in the lowest setting in the stop brush section. So that's how the brush roll motor turns off. Kind of interesting, if you ask me, but not really the most convenient. I guess Dirt Devil kind of wanted to be discreet to distinguish this from non-dual motor vacuums of the time, which is kind of interesting at that point. So now let's go ahead and flip this thing underneath to show you the underside. So here is the brush roll that is in this. It's Dirt Devil's typical wooden brush roll design that they've used on their vacuums for many years. The bristles are fairly stiff, and they do form a chevron pattern, so they will funnel everything into the center suction path. so the super high airflow and suction can take it away. And add into the fact that this is a dual motor vacuum, sometimes the high airflow for this can be a bad thing, especially for certain piles of carpet, because the brush roll motor is only so powerful to turn this big massive of a brush roll. So even though that, it still manages to groom pretty good, even though the belt is also another factor. This thing takes Style 6 belts from Dirt Devil. They're not really the best quality, so they can slip after a few uses because of the aggressive agitation coupled with the massive high airflow. I'm not running any Style 6 belts in this because, one, I couldn't find them at the time, so now I'm currently running a Hoover 011 belt that was made for the Futura and Power Max canisters. It was short enough, so it does fit on, and it does seem to work good, but eventually I want to find some actual Dirt Devil Style 6 belts. But it works okay for the time being, but eventually one of these days I will have to fix that, and one of these days I will definitely tear this brush roll down and give it a good service. But it works actually very good for the time being. Let's go and tip this. Oh, tip this back up. Now again, show you the back side. So right here on the back here, you do have your non-original attachments. The crevice tool I have right here. This doesn't look to be a Dirt Devil crevice tool, but I actually have it mounted from the bottom that's pressure fit in place, because somehow I can't seem to mount it in from the top now that this cord's in the way, and the hose rack as well. And right here you have your non-original dusting brush, which I actually stole this from one of my Hoovers just for the sake of this video. Surprisingly, it does fit in place. And if you didn't know this vacuum any better, you would have guessed this came original with this dusting brush, which this is one thing I will definitely think Dirt Devil went ridiculous over. Their combo dusting brush and upholstery tool is just too aggressive to be a dusting brush. Even like, say, this Hoover dusting brush that has really soft, almost delicate bristles is more effective at being a dusting brush than the Dirt Devil version is. I do not know what Dirt Devil was thinking when they designed that. I really wish they had softer bristles. And here on the back here, you have your extra long hose that wraps around the top right here. And is mounted on the back. And here is the wand at the end. You also do have a extra hose release that you can basically, with some finesse, you just pull this out and you could add a little extra feet of hose should you desire. Then you just simply lock it back in place. Pretty odd if you ask me. Not too many people are gonna know that's there, but you do have your nice big bright red wand mounted at the end right here so you don't miss it. Which this was mostly a thing for MVP lineup of vacuums. You also do have a little carry handle on the back here where the bottom cord hook is. The vacuum is kind of pretty heavy, even though it's made of cheap plastic. It's not as heavy as most others, but it's still a bit on the heavy side. So that's one thing to point out. So now let's go ahead and release the power cord. And this cord hook, I will make a remark, is pretty stiff over the years. And it latches in so good, I'm actually too worried if I twist it too hard, it might break. which that's another thing of Dirt Devil quality control. And the cord is extremely long. This has got to at least be a 30-foot cord. So, very nice and long. So, we'll go ahead and plug this guy in. And now, we will go ahead and give this thing... Oh, actually, let's go ahead and show you guys the model number now that I have you guys down here. It is the model number 089200, and from Royal Appliance Manufacturing in Cleveland, Ohio. At 120 volts, 60 hertz, 12 amps. The manufacturing code. If anyone can serial date this for me, please let me know. I want to believe this thing was manufactured in 97. And made in the USA. That is one thing I love about these older Dirt Devils, is that they were US made. This was long before their production moved to China, and really their quality just shot downhill from there. So right down here is your pedal release right here, and the wheels on the back are actually mounted to the base of the cleaner, similar to what a Panasonic would do, or Kenmore when they were contracted by Panasonic. The wheels are mounted on the base, so when you release it, the wheels will slide underneath the vacuum, so the head will be floating on top of the carpet. And one other thing I would like to point out is this handle release. This is a common thing that likes to break over time, but I managed to skate around that by tightening up the little screw down here that seems to hold it in place. The vacuum seems to transport just fine how it is, but this large gap right here is kind of bothersome. But as long as the vacuum stands up and works how it should, I'm not really complaining too much. Just that you'll just have to put up with. But anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and turn this vacuum on and give you a demo of it running. And the power switch on this is actually on the side of the cleaner right here. As you can see, it's also outlined in red. I think this may be another MVP special edition. And the lettering is also colored red. That's been a Dirt Devil thing for years. But anyway, here we go. This thing is actually more quiet than I thought it would be. And there's a view of your twin headlights. And that's just the suction only. Let's go ahead and turn the brush roll motor on, if I can. See, when you push it to the brush stop, it will press that micro switch and turn the brush roll motor off. So now let's go ahead and adjust it to the pile of this carpet. very smooth running vacuum. This thing is extremely powerful. And before we end the video, let's go ahead and give an attempt to demonstrate this in its tool mode. So since this is in upright position, a diverter valve will give you the tool suction to the hose. Unfortunately, per its design, the valve is not really that effective. So tool suction is not as good as it could have been. And also there is a little extension wand that is missing because this little bracket is broken off. So that is unfortunate. Let's see if I can't show you the extra hose. This is just kind of how long of a reach you got. It's not really fantastic. It gets you by. When you're done, you just simply make an attempt to mount it up around the top here. All right. And there we have it. Well, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the Dirt Devil Ultra MVP. Be sure and stay tuned, and don't forget to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.